So in this module, we're going to look at some of the tasks involved in managing virtual networks, which includes creating a virtual network. Here are the most common virtual network management tasks: creating it, viewing the settings, adding, removing address space, adding, changing DNS servers, or when you're done, deleting it. Now, the process for creating a virtual network is extremely simple. This is done just using the Azure Marketplace. When you create a new object, if the object requires a network, it will prompt you to create all the network objects as part of creating that object. But you can pre-create all your networking infrastructure. And in fact, it's recommended you do that if you're deploying something that's more complex. So here I am in the Azure Marketplace, and I've searched for virtual network, and I've just gone ahead and clicked Create Virtual Network. And so you'll see that this is a very simple process. It only takes a couple of seconds. And I'm going to specify things like the name of the VNet. So this is maybe my US East VNet 1. The address space I'm going to use. And so I'm going to create a fairly large address space for this one. Resource group. And I'm going to change it. I've got other objects in my subscription. You'll notice that it identified an overlap. It's going to make sure that we keep everything unique. So we're just going to go with an 11 dot, which doesn't have an overlap. And then it's going to prompt me to create my very first subnet. And create an address space for the subnet. You'll notice that the subnet requires it be within the address space of the VNet. So we're going to create this subnet as 11. And we're going to change this a little bit. So 11.0.1, or this is essentially a Class C style subnet. Not a Class C address, but a Class C level subnet. It's a Class A level subnet. And then we're going to enable this new technology called service endpoints. And we're just going to select all services. And we're going to click Create. And so what that will actually go out and do is create the new network object. So I'm going to come back to my resource groups. And here's my corp resource group. We can see the VNet was now created. And I can click on it, and we can look at the properties of it. And this would include things like the address space, which I can add to or modify. The subnets, which I can again add or modify these subnets. The DNS server settings, so I can use the default or I can choose a custom DNS server. We'll leave this as the default for now. And as well other things such as peerings and service endpoints, which we'll look at in other places. But just gives you a quick sense of how simple it is to create and then modify any of the network settings that are available in here. So when we go back to our networks for a second, things you may do, and this is kind of what I just showed you within the UI, you can now go in and view, configure any of those settings, including things like your address space, your subnets. You can see any connected devices, which is kind of an interesting thing, essentially which devices are on this network and what their IP address is, your DNS servers, your peerings. There's also a convenient diagram that shows the relationship between the VNet, its subnets, and then devices that are attached to those subnets. When you're done, it's a fairly simple process to come back in and delete that VNet if we no longer need it. So that's our look at managing virtual networks.